Okay, this is the first in a series of conversations that we are trying to have on topics which affect all humankind. Um, so, my first question to you is: how do you view death? What is your umbrella thought about death?
Death. Hmm. So death is the only definitive thing
Okay,
since once there is life, death is the only definite thing for sure. And looking, I've not really thought about it, but we know that time, or rather, I see it that time is ticking. But um so whatever has to be done, whatever you think must be achieved or completed has a time limit. So make best use of whatever time is left.
okay,
But in terms of the completion, what happens or how it happens is not something that you ponder over or you know uh, think something that how is it going to happen, when is it going to happen, why is it going to happen. Not in that sense. It's just that you know that this is going to happen, and when is sort of uncertain, why is also uncertain, how is also uncertain. But it's certain that it's going to happen. So make best use of whatever time is there with us.
okay. I have two immediate questions that come to mind. One is why would you not think about it at all if it is that certain because it is a rarity in all the other uncertain things that you mentioned?
So because whatever kind of thought process or hypothesis that we do, it can't really uh, give any sort of experiential wisdom till we go
Die.
through till we die. So as such, the question, whatever we do, it will just be a thought or a hypothesis or an assumption. So spending much time on it, we all, I mean, surrounded with all kinds of assumptions, and that's how we live also our lives. But this is like one more. So there is nothing really fruitful, I think, which will come because you have a certain hypothesis about it or an assumption or you work. So hence, don't spend too much time on it. More on that.
Okay, my second question regarding that was: is it the wisdom part that you spoke about, or is there also a sense of fear in contemplating the exactness of death?
No, so fear, fear maybe it can be deep rooted, and I think would exist probably if gone deep. But even though that aspect, I mean, at times probably um, I might have thought on that this, and it didn't seem very as fearful as people generally tend to make it. It is uncertain, that is there. So fear of uncertainty is always there. This is, I think, with each one. So that can't be avoided. But it is the uncertainty is only about something that's not happened. So really going over it, will just I think keep making you more and more anxious or more and more fearful. It's like that, so you have fear of that interview. Say you have a fear of attending interviews. So the interview, is in 1 month's time. So from now, you start thinking about it and you're rolling in that, right? Okay, so it's now 1 month. 1 month, and then okay, 30 days, 29 days, and you keep counting, you keep living, you keep increasing your fear more and more. Or else, so you rather keep it like, is it now? You look at it, is it now? Is it now? So it's not now. So then why fear now? At the time of interview, let's fear. So you're pushing that fear to the point when the interview is there. So what happens is all this anxiety and stress that you went through probably the 30 days, that you have reduced to 1 day, or at least to the time that that interview is there. So at that time, is it now? Yes, it is now. So now is the time. Either you remain
Okay.
or live that fear, or you do whatever is that you can, the best that you can.
Okay, I wanted to pause here because this is something that was crossing my mind right now. This doing the best that you can because you have a limitation on time. Uh, is this what also spurs you to do the right action because that effectively forces you to look at time as a commodity with which is not endless.
Hmm.
So you have to make best use of it. So you will put your entire attention to what has to be done, and so you will start mastering whatever subject you pick up a little more seriously. Obviously, it's not a guarantee
Right.
because death may also encompass death of ideas, concepts, and whatever we think about time or any such thing. Um, okay, so that is how you connected with. So because there is death, so there needs to be an urgency. That urgency leads to better quality of thoughts and words and living, if one were to put it in a certain format. I have one question regarding. First, I will ask the basic question. There are a lot of philosophers in the world who contemplated death and come out with a lot of wisdom as well. That is not necessarily uh, actionable, quote unquote, but they have contributed. There are a lot of them. Uh, how do you view people who have come up with certain kinds of philosophies or about even religion in a way can be loosely said to be a set of beliefs that was brought about by certain wise people, not all of them practitioners initially perhaps. So how do you view that aspect of life? A lot of people say, "Oh, I am not afraid of death." I'll tell you where I'm coming from. There are a lot of people who tell me that they are not afraid of death. It's not about me. It's not about this. But the slightest unhappiness or slightest thing that doesn't go their way, they get agitated very quickly. But when they say they are not afraid of death, they actually think they mean it.
Yeah, I think even I was like that at one point, that I don't fear death. But at times when I think looking at it more closely, because it's that uncertainty and you have not conquered fear, so it's there. And if I now look at it a little more objectively, I think there is going to be the fear. The fear is there, the uncertainty is there. So as such, it's not going to be like that you don't. Once you are in that situation, it will be a little kind of overwhelming, I think. If I look at it, little objectively, I don't think it's going to be as normal, like things are going on. Not like that. But at the same time, at that point, what can be done? If something is there and it is inevitable, so at that point, what you can do is, what's the best that you can do? So, so
Okay.
looking at that, it's more about do the best for at the moment that you're in.
So is
And
that a sort of practice? Because
yes, yes,
the overwhelming nature of death or we keep talking death, but I am saying even death of a big idea. So I am investing to start a new business, and suddenly I find that that business is banned in that particular geography or whatever, or some
Mm.
big problem comes up. In the event of death of an idea or my own self or my health. So uh, living in the moment is a very nice thing to hear,
Yes,
but
yes.
how
Yeah,
does
but
one do that?
yeah, it living, actually practicing it is humongous, a very, very difficult task. I've been trying for many years. It doesn't happen. It is
But so,
very,
what is the advantage? So, on one hand, you have told us when we were starting that there is a certain sense of urgency and the right mindset to live the right way. So, if one is trying, however successful or not in that particular scenario, how do you? What is the benefit of even trying anything like that?
yeah, so it is, it's not just about that. In general, it's like given whatever situation you are in, so what best can be done at the current, given the circumstance, given whatever is the situation that you are in, what can one do best is max that's possible, because what else can you do to make the situation better? So since this, what you can, and whatever that you think of and do, generally decisions, they tend to go bad, or they tend to become or go against you, mostly because you probably are not in a right state of mind.
Okay,
So 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 being in the moment is more about that you're sort of fully engrossed in the current, and you're not cluttered with the fear, which is the uncertainty of the future or some experience of the past, and you just look at it as the current situation as it is and try to do best for that situation. So hopefully you will get, or you will take a decision which is more balanced and which is not influenced by your past, probably some experiences which are very strong, and also probably not because of some uncertainty or something about the future. So that way, I think that's the best one can do. That's the best one can do in the sense that the decision that you have taken is more balanced, and hence probably maybe the better decision. It's not like it's the best decision, because
yeah,
they
yeah.
are better
I have
people.
a question coming there.
Yeah.
So, okay, I respect the fact that you said that one gets, a certain kind of practice. Practice by practice, I mean, in terms of living reality. On a daily basis, you try and live in this manner that you've spoken to the best of one's capability. Now, suppose there is a big event that has happened and you have acted in the best possible way at that point of time and yet failed in some manner, or not failed, but you it is result is not what you thought it would be.
Mm.
Now you cross that moment and go ahead and you look back at it at some other point. How can one be sure that there are no regrets about it? Because I was talking to somebody who said a very interesting thing. She said, some days I have all the right answers how to resolve this. And I wish that like 15 years back when this particular thing had happened to me, I had acted like this. I would have done the right thing and it would have not created the big mess that it did. But unfortunately, I do not seem to have that wisdom then. So my question to you is there any uh, fundamental realization that you've had in your experience at any point of time that helps you not regret the times that you spent earlier? Is there any point of view you have about the part of regret specifically?
Yeah, so see, this is, I think, always the case. No, in hindsight, when you look at things in hindsight, you look at anything in history probably, or say even your past, whatever things or incidents have occurred. If you look at it in hindsight, probably when you are calmer, you'd say, "Oh, this thing I shouldn't have done." That is very clear because you see it more objectively, you see it more sensibly. But you're sensible not when you are in a more
Agitated mode.
yeah. So you're a lot more balanced, right? And that's when it strikes. So to get when you're in that situation and that time to get the balance, then the same decision would come. But the mind is not balanced at those times. It gets overwhelmed. The whole situation takes over. There are people around, so their emotions also will spill over, and it's a whole mixture of things. So with all these events and people and things happening, with all of them, if we are able to keep our sanity or our balance, so then this decision, whatever we take, would be sensible. And I think that is what will make us
Live better.
live better, of course. And and even then we look back, it would be like we did the best that we could do in that particular situation. Even though it might say as time progresses we might become wiser or we might not become wiser, but either ways we might look back and see, okay, this could have been done better. But yeah, this is always the case, right? There is no utopia, there is no like an ideal scenario because we are a baggage
Evolving.
of we are a baggage of a number of defilements, impurities, and some keep adding, some keep becoming better. So it's a mixture, and as one progresses, so different things look. You start looking at things differently. So earlier, something maybe you would see that what I did was this was like completely wrong or completely immature or just stupid or anything, because you have reached a certain point now and you think that
And the
it's
perspective is bigger.
bigger. Yeah. So
Okay.
hence it is more about staying at that.
So, I will try to sum up what you've said so far. That means trying to be at your objective best as much as possible is a good way to live life till you reach the nth point of your life, whatever that point would be.
Yeah.
I would now want to take the conversation to a different aspect. So, have you dealt with the death of anybody that you know who's been close to you at any point of time?
Mm, yeah.
Friends, relatives, anyone?
Yeah, relatives. If we look at it recently, yeah, a relative
Hmm.
who passed away. Yeah.
So now, how do you look at somebody else's death? Now, I want to bring a perspective to this. One is your personal feelings about that person's death. That is not what the question is. The question is, uh, for now, you've laid the quote unquote ideal way to live, kind of, at least in your eyes. Uh, Now, there are a lot of people who do not see this as the ideal way to live. There are enough number of people who think खाओ पियो मजा करो. Why do we get serious about stuff that is going to happen? There are other people who would think uh, this is all conjecture anyways. Why bother about what is going to happen? And let's leave it. They may have the same provocation that you had, that it is uncertain, but that uncertainty is so huge in their eyes or their viewpoint that they would rather not bother about it at all. Now, having said that, they would then not get the uh, urgency to do the right thing or even bother about it. They would say, I'm happy at this point of time, why should I bother about anything else? And we've seen umpteen number of things like that. Now, when you see somebody like that pass away, and somebody close to you, because I would want to know what are the emotional repercussions on your mind, as well as your objective reading, if there is anything learning from somebody else's death, however painful that it sounds.
So on death, I think so that individual, whoever has gone away, and probably um So from my perspective, if you see
Yeah.
that, I see that okay, this individual may not have done the best possible thing, but generally, at least the current experience that I've had is more about it's over. So there is no such. Yes, they might be actually probably for a few minutes or so. I think that it would have been better if such a thing he or she would have done. But then it's now over. So there is no point really going over it. So just sort of leave it. In terms of the emotional, the emotional connect is there, but I as an individual am very selfish. So it's uh, it's not so strong to really have such an impact. I think on me.
So please define selfish here.
Selfish in the sense I am the center of the universe. It's more on that thing that I am living, or every individual of us. The I is very, very prominent. So it doesn't
So I
let
am
any.
alive, I don't bother who's alive or not.
So eventually it is more on that you are the center stage. I am the center stage. So nobody replaces this center stage, and hence it is very short lived probably. It is, yeah, when there is grief, so you it is probably sidelined for some time, but then eventually it just disappears, it just dissipates.
Okay. Um,
What about how have you experienced the.
my understanding, I recently suffered a loss like that. Uh, Suffered is a very strong word, but right now I would use it because there are various emotions that cross my mind. So I'm just using it very loosely. It is not as strong as suffering used to be about this. Um I think earlier there was sense of a great void, and when I use the word void, I use it very knowingly that uh, there was absence, obviously, but the absence used to hurt very terribly.
Hmm.
Uh, it used to be a constant sense of how can one live with something which is irreplaceable, because every person uh, in our vicinity, be they are relatives or friends or people whom we know, we there was this constant sense of continuity to it. And when that was broken, uh, there was a lack of understanding. There was grief, of course, there was grief. I also admit the same thing that you did, that I realized that, okay, there was a certain sense of arrogance in being alive. This I learned not only through my own behavior, but also through the people who were around me during funerals, and I saw them talking of life and business and sometimes absolutely banal things right in a crematorium. For example, they would be talking about, do you want to go for a movie 3 days from now, or let's meet in the evening and go out for dinner, or stuff like that. And specifically during times when I was quite in the quote unquote grief mode, when I used to hear this standing next to them, I used to sense in me also a sense of I didn't want to believe that I would also die.
Hmm.
So there was this ignorance that I wanted to keep alive, that this will not happen to me. And I had read this somewhere and it resonated well with me, that there was a point where you feel that I know a secret that this dead man or dead woman didn't.
Hmm.
The sense of power of sorts. So that was something that made me very unhappy about myself. That an event which is of such gravity is being treated so banally by me also. But I was angry at them, but I was also angry with myself because I also belong to that creed of people, and I have studied death for many years. Even as a kid, I used to be enthralled by it. As a kid, I thought I was far more sorted about death, and now the difference of late when I have seen couple of losses in the last 1 or 2 years, I think there is a sense of absence, but it does not hurt as much. The sense of absence is there, and that's the reason why I do not want to call it the void, because when it was the void, it just was like a huge valley that had no end. The feeling was of despair, and I just didn't know what to do with it. And not necessarily because the person had died. It could have been some loved one, some friend, somebody who parted because of going away because of some reason or another, or we did not uh, find common ground for friendship or love or any relationship later. So that used to be a huge sense of loss. Now, over a period, in my understanding, that there is a sense of certainty that things will go wrong. This is recent, so I cannot really go a little deeper into this, but there's a certain sense of that things will go wrong in some manner, and my planning towards working towards things includes that certainty that things will go wrong, and that kind of frees me with the setbacks that I get. It's not that I feel any less, but the intensity goes lesser. So in
So it's
that,
more about, it's more like Murphy's Law.
it could be Murphy's Law, but again, Murphy's Law sometimes sounds to me cocky about knowing laws and words that make you deal with it. Vis-a-vis a lived experience has a different sense of, I know it sounds contradictory, but it's a joy of sorts to be negative about things. It's a joy that you were presuming things would go this bad, and then they sometimes never reach that aspect. And you feel, okay, I can manage. And in doing so, there is a certain reason for doing this. I personally had a lot of problems with dukkha as a concept as propounded by a lot of sages. And I always felt that they were being very, why were they negating the happier times? Over a period, one understanding that came to me was that dukkha is not just sorrow, it is also some kind of dissatisfaction. And as certain experiences taught me again and again, just embedding the dissatisfaction within the satisfaction that one was taking, I think that was freedom. I do not know what words to use, but actually it was freedom. Because it just freed you from the consequences that were going to happen. If they were going bad, you already knew partially that they were going to go this way. In death, the I would want to think the recent losses that I have seen, and I continue to hear in today's times, I am overwhelmed. There are days when I just sit and cry, but it is more on a very cosmic level of seeing dukkha spread over humanity in the form of a disease which none of us seem to have any handle over. But again, even I cannot cry beyond a minute or minute and a half. Again, I come back to that acceptance of the fact that, well, today it's called COVID, for example, but earlier it was called cardiac arrest, or cancer when we were growing up suddenly started gaining huge proportions.
I want to ask you, you mentioned about people in the funerals. They are, talking about everything, the most
But
banal
death.
things, the most banal things. So, what do you think should be the topic? Because I found myself also in the same situation, and I think also it's a thing that people that you have not met from a long time, you tend to meet over there. So even I end up
Ah,
talking, I think, everything but about the person who's just passed away. But
Okay.
what is more, what according to you is a more appropriate thing to
I
talk
think
about?
one important thing that I would want to put is there is no should in this. I do not have a point of view how others should behave. It
Hmm.
was more my understanding of the arrogance of the living over the dead. It's possible I may have read this concept and internalized it. It is a possibility. Um, but to answer your question, I think one should, if at all there is a should, one should study one's mind and figure out if it is escapism. Are we trying to escape the concept of death itself? I will give you an example that had happened. A very, very dear friend had lost his mom to cancer and she was suffering for around, I think, more than a decade, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
And when I went to the funeral, he was talking to another friend at a decibel level that was unbelievable
Hmm.
and laughing and talking. And my first reaction was, this guy is in shock.
Hmm.
And he was laughing and talking about some, what happened and this or that and stuff. And obviously, out of respect, nobody was pointing it out. It was his mom who had just expired and he was close to her. Till date, I would think he's not understood that point, is what I would think. I haven't met him very often. So the
If,
question remains, at the funeral, you just got to ask
yeah.
yourself, what is your state of mind
In fact,
really?
even I was thinking about it, and what comes to my mind is more that it should be silence is the only appropriate sort of. So I was just pondering over that, and I think in terms of what one can speak, the there is probably nothing. Silence is probably the only thing that can um, make one realize that what's really,
Important.
yeah, not even important. I think at that point in time that that some individual has passed away, and
I was also thinking respect for the dead in a way,
yeah, so I think silence is the only appropriate thing to do it,
if at all.
if at all. But it becomes very uh,
Unnerving for a lot of people also, I would
yeah,
think.
because if you just don't speak, it's not it's not like there is any grief or anything as such. The silence is just a good response, I think. It's not, but people would mistake it to be a shock or a grief or something
Yeah.
probably.
I think it's manageable. That part at least is manageable. Maybe it's something to ponder over our own limitation of time, as you put it in the beginning. So, yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation on death. A very good start, hopefully.
Yeah.
Let's hope people who are listening can spend some time on. Uh, all of us are trying to grasp our heads around this unbelievably
Yeah.
real topic of sorts. So, let's hope
We have all
somebody.
we left death and we are talking about what should happen or what should be a reaction after death.
Yeah.
So we left death long back.
Yeah, I guess so.
Hopefully
But
we'll
it is
continue.
it is an important aspect because it is the physical surroundings of certainty that we will be facing at some point of time. Hopefully,
At
uh,
least that's something that we'll do while we are living. After that, we can't think of a reaction. We wouldn't have one.
that's a wonderful end to a very serious topic. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Bye.
nice.